Erie Arts and Culture, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the first annual Arts and Agency Week, a virtual event designed to explore the ways of the arts, how the arts are being leveraged to raise awareness of systematic issues, amplify underrepresented voices, and generate creative solutions to societal challenges. Funding for Arts and Agency Week was provided in part by the Erie Community Foundation through their Shaping Tomorrow grant program. My name is Lourdes Hasso, and I am VP of Advancing Opportunities with the Chroma Guild and the Associate Program Director, Art Instructor with the Neighborhood Art House. Since 1995, the mission of the Benedictine Sisters of Erie Inner City Neighborhood Art House is to enable youth to experience beauty, grow in positive self-expression and self-discipline, and develop into full and productive human beings. The Neighborhood Art House provides after-school summer classes in the visual, performing, literary arts, and environmental action at no cost to at-risk youth. Today, I have the privilege of introducing Vanessa German. Vanessa German is a citizen artist creating sculpture, performance, immersive installation, and photography that center the Earthling's experience with loving connection, intimacy, vulnerability, and creative power as definitive human technologies. German's works center the insistence of heart, soul, and loving as critical engines of shape-shifting and future-making in the dynamic ecosystems of body and community. This presentation is live streamed through Zoom, as well as Erie Arts and Culture's Facebook page and YouTube channel. The session will conclude with a Q&A. If you have any questions, please type them into the text box. And at the end of the presentation, I will read the questions to Vanessa for answering. We thank you for being present with us today, and we hope you enjoy the presentation. Vanessa?
Greetings, everyone. How are you? I'm Vanessa German, and I am in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is Seneca Nation Haudenosaunee land that was violently and brutally taken from people who still exist. And I am a Black woman wearing a khaki skull cap and a hand-printed hanky, brown Bob Marley t-shirt. I have one butterfly earring in my ear and two long braids and a sort of heart-shaped face and a gap between my teeth. And I'm sitting in my kitchen in a neighborhood in Pittsburgh called Homewood. So you all, I would like to say thank you for and welcome you to my home. This talk is going to function more as a conversation. So if at any point you have a question, you can write it down, because your question could take us to a place that I couldn't imagine, and we might really want to go there. So you can ask a question whenever you're inspired to ask a question. I appreciate and respect the power of curiosity. So let's see what happens. I want to begin by honoring and giving love and respect to my ancestors, to those ancestors of mine who were enslaved in this land called the United States. I give honor and respect to them for the labor of their body and the labor of their soul that it has built and the structures of this land, built the White House and toiled the soil of this land. And honor and love and respect to those of my ancestors who did not live to see freedom on this land, and honor and love and respect and lifting up to my ancestors who were able to see freedom on this land. I'm going to show some images today, and talk about the shape of my work into my most recent work. I'm going to show images, and sometimes I'll move through them very quickly. And I'll do that for the sake of time and to get to things that are the most pointed and feeling my heart the most in this time. So again, any questions at any time, because curiosity is really powerful. And I am going to share screen right now. So if you all could please just give me the grace of patience to get this up onto the screen. And I also want to say I'm in my house, so I will share with you from my heart, from the capacity of my intellectual prowess, but I will do so as I would communicate with you if we were sitting in a coffee shop, if you were sitting at my house. I have no rigid formality to offer you except the formality that is truth and whatever revelations come from the time that we have together. So some of this talk is going to be pretty intense. Talking about mental health, talking about suicidal ideation, talking about Black death, talking about trauma, which of course is so present on the land that we are on. So I love you, and I want you all to take care of yourself. So if you gotta go, you gotta go. You know what I'm saying? So thanks, and thanks for your grace and patience with me sharing screen. I begin my talk tonight with this phrase: I believe in the power of art. And I want to know if you all believe in the power of art. And if you do believe in the power of art, I'm curious, what do you believe art can do? What do you ask of art? And if you believe that something has power, what do you believe that it has the power to do? And are you activating that power? Are you experiencing that power timidly? Are you using it courageously? What do you believe that art has the power to do? And are you pushing that belief? Are you asking it to cross the line of your own courage? I believe in the power of art, and I ask art to do everything that I feel needs to be transformed, because I believe that art is that creativity is a transformative technology that we all have such deep access to. So wherever I experience the need for transformation, I'm asking art to do that work, whether it's in my heart and in my soul, or it's in my neighborhood. I have given myself this title that works well for me. I'm a self-taught artist, which I'm not going to make any assumptions or put anything in anyone else's mouth. For me, being a self-taught artist means that I am in a constant gathering and sifting and filtering of information and inspiration and wisdom and data from the world around me, and relationships and my connection to human beings and to the land. And I realized that there is, and have been confronted a lot of times with the idea that there are so many limitations for self-taught artists, which a lot of us know aren't true, but that not coming from the academy and not having the paper and letters of the academy is a limitation. I have found no limitation in the ongoing living work that I am doing in learning how to be alive and learning about materials. So the biggest teacher I've had in my life has been my mother. So I'm a citizen artist, I'm self-taught, and I'm working in human technologies and centering dimensional wholeness. And for me, being a citizen artist centers around what it is to be an authentic a rooted, a connected and vital inhabitant of all of your identities. Like, how am I inhabiting my humanity? Am I doing that intentionally? Am I using that which I believe in to move me through my humanity in relationship with institutions, systems, lands, and in relationship? So citizen artist is, for me, centering the work of my life, which I am holding as I treat my life like it's a work of art, like it is a massive, the most massive sculptural scale that any artist can reach, is the scale of their entire life and their entire existence. So as a citizen that is working to inhabit my entire existence through human technologies, through the technology of the soul, how am I using art as a tool? And the thing is, I ask a lot of art, and I cannot afford to not ask a lot from art. Here is a picture of me as a little Black girl with the curly hair. And there's an image of some of my ancestors in a cotton field in either Alabama or Louisiana. And there's an image of one of my mother's quilts. I show these things to you at the beginning so that you can understand some of the soul that moves through me. I feel that I exist in the simultaneity of time, which means I'm always present in the simultaneity of time, past, present, and future simultaneously, which means I am in connection with my ancestors. I'm in connection with my mother as an ancestor. I'm in connection with all parts of myself, with my little girl self and the part of myself that is already 89 years old. And so when I talk about human technology, I'm really thinking and feeling and resonating in places of innate humanness and the innate human animal, but then also that place of mystery that exists in every human being. If human beings are all 99.9% genetically identical, we must speak to the power of that 0.01% that is responsible for Beyonce and Beethoven. So how did I get here? How did I get to this place, to this kitchen, to talk to you about art and my life? I had to decide rather seriously how not to die in my own life and how not to die by my own hand, because I'm still awakening to all of the suffocating and deeply oppressive weight that I have been ingesting my entire life in systems of white supremacist delusion, which for me really show up as internalized anti-Blackness and self-loathing. And I think about Toni Morrison asking herself in The Bluest Eye, how does self-loathing begin? How does shame begin? And I, without having that language and really picking through my own soul and contending with my flesh, my big Black woman queer flesh on this land, I really had to figure out a way not to kill myself in a state of self-loathing in a world that told me that I was worthless in so many different ways and shapes. And this is the work of art that brought me to myself. This is called Power Figure to Keep Me Alive. If you look closely, just take a look and see all of the different things. Like, what all materials do you see in there? Do you recognize anything? Do you have any of these objects in your house or on your person right this instant? What here looks grief-stricken? Is anything in this image feel to you? Can you feel it through a screen? Do you feel connection to the shape, to the accumulation, to the sense of where, the sense of history, to the abundance, to the accumulation of objects? All of these things, accumulation of objects, all of the shapes and the colors and the textures in this work are intentional. This work came to me when I was really trying to figure out how to stay alive. And what I did was dip into what I understand now is a powerful technology for myself, which is to go to the house of my soul and to turn up the volume on the frequency of my own instincts, and to really trust my hand and to trust the movements that came to me as I was gathering materials and moving those materials. I gave myself 6 months to live. I did this little experiment on myself to see if I could keep myself alive every day for 6 months, doing what felt right, doing what brought me joy. Because, you know, for me, honestly, the world, I never got the message that I could do whatever I wanted to do. I received and took seriously a lot of messages about, which basically equaled that me as a Black woman, I should expect to exhaust myself, to riddle my body to death with labor, to agonize on behalf of somebody else's bottom line, and then to die. And to maybe look cute a little bit on the way, maybe get a little bit of sexual attention, have a little bit of joy, but not to live a life that is whatever I want. And this work taught me that I could do that because it brought me into understanding of the language of the artist that was within me. And it also brought me that this experience that was really profound when on the screen is a power figure that is in the collection of the Met. The first artwork that you saw here, I made 6 power figures in 6 months. I kept myself alive and I found a deep understanding of a language of love that was true for my own soul. A historian saw one of my works and said, "You're doing something that's been done in the Congo. Don't you know about Congo power figures?" And I had no idea what they were talking about. And he said, "You should do some research." And that research brought me to these objects that have been made for thousands of years that looked and felt so much like what I was working with, the nails and the accumulation, and also the sense of power that you could work power through your body into objects, through the world, and it would be, and that you could access a kind of power with your own agency, and by meaning to do something, by intentionally moving forth with an intention in your heart and in your mind, and moving that intention into material, and then letting that powerful object be able to do work in the world. So that set me on a way of learning as a self-taught artist, where I decided I really wanted to know what was already inside of me, in my feelings and my instincts of my earthlingness. I wanted to know what it really was to be a human being, untethered and unburdened by the lies and the hypocrisy and the strategic gaslighting and the brutality of a white supremacist delusional system that that was really limiting my own capacity to be in relationship to my own humanity. So I set myself on a practice, a deep dive to get a PhD on the house of my own soul, to really come to know courageously my own places of fear, and to pull them apart and obliterate them with the shape of a truth that came from a place of rightness that nothing outside of me could affirm. It had to be something that came from within me to affirm my own place of rightness, which I recognize in America was a death sentence, has been a death sentence for Black women, to come to know and give authority and agency to a language of rightness that exists within you. That has been a death sentence for Black women on this land. But I had to go that route because the opposite would have been a death sentence for me. So looking back at some of my earlier work, I think about the little Black girl that you saw in the first picture, little, strange, nappy-headed, grubby, Black, gap-toothed, wild, turning cartwheels and Black backflips on the front lawn of my parents' house in Los Angeles, California in the 80s and 90s. I think about that wild little Black girl who was sneered upon and grimaced at, who was sexually assaulted and was constantly told, oh, don't worry about it. These things just happen. Don't expect anybody to like you or to treat you with care. I think about the messages that little Black girl got. And I look at some of my early work and I realized that what I was trying to do was to reckon with the shape of my own body and the placement of my own humanity through objects that were contending with the historical implications and the historical stories and the historical trauma and the historical magic of Black women on this land and of Black girls. I was constantly making these small power figures that were contending with the master American narrative in relationship to a narrative that was rising with heat and a current from my own soul. So in a lot of these early works, you see me contending with Black and white bodies. You see me contending with the hierarchy that I was taught. I was taught so many different ways that white people were just more important than me, that white girls were more innocent, valuable, fragile, and worthy of care and worthy of tenderness. And so in my early work, I'm really contending with undoing the master narrative from my own body so that I could actually live inside of a freedom that was truly free. Because I believe that, you know, my ancestors knew when the Emancipation Proclamation came through, they knew that what was being sold to them as freedom wasn't really freedom. So you have some of these old ethnic notions, the little Black baby being thrown, flushed down the toilet, and of course the mammy, the Aunt Jemima piece, which people have always told me because I have a big Black body and heavy breasts that I look like a mammy or I look like Aunt Jemima. Mostly white men have said that kind of thing to me in a way that is sexualized and really violent. And at times, any response that I would have to them would have them respond to me similar ways, which was something that was really triggering me about the administration of 45, the way that 45 would say, I'm just joking. I didn't really mean that. Oh, you know, I was just kidding. Grown white men have said those kinds of things to me in response to me standing up for my own body and for my own soul. So inside of this work, I'm really bringing presence to this lie, this master narrative lie about what a Black woman's place is in this particular nation and society, and our relationship to beauty and labor and power and the deep resiliency that is a part of our birthright, that magic. So I'm contending with that, and I'm creating these power figures and I'm calling them power figures because I'm really asking them to do work. I'm asking them to become a vehicle. So you see here that this piece is built on an old toy farm truck. It has wheels and it has a bird on it and has a boat at the back end. So I'm asking it to travel. It can take the ground. It can go on sea. It can go to the air, but this vehicle needs to move this transformation forward. So looking at my work, every level and every object in the work matters. So if you look at this, the bundles that are around the legs of the work with the buttons and the keys, I think about who here had a grandmother or an auntie or, you know, a father who sewed, who had that tin of buttons, and the buttons were precious. You didn't just throw buttons away because they were always useful. They could always be used to mend something, to put something back together. And that's such a loving act to me, that you save this small piece of bone or this small piece of mother of pearl because one day somebody might need it to hold something together or to put something back together. For me, that is a very loving act of hand stitching a button back in. The keys, every object in my work, I have a lexicon, a language of symbols. a symbology for everything. So the keys for me are internal and external freedom. The snakes are both wisdom and the presence of the snaky, sneaky, toxic, poisonous nature of white supremacist delusion. And a lot of times in my work, the objects exist in polarity. They're existing in a strata, past, present, and future, and political, cultural, spiritual. So inside of these works, these small Black figures, they're about 3.5, 4 feet tall, and they all have secrets in them. They all have riddles in them. And I think about the secret and the riddle of a Black woman's life and a Black woman's heart and a Black woman's mind. My grandmother was a domestic, and I think about what she thought about and prayed about and what songs she hummed to herself when she was ironing a man's shirts, a man who was not her husband, to make his life more livable and bearable and easier on his wife. I think about what songs and prayers kept my grandmother whole while she did that labor. So I'm exploring in these works freedom and polarity. Like, what's the opposite of freedom? I'm thinking about fear and the constants of fear, and using these power figures to remove fear off my body. See, on the body of this Black girl, she's just laden down and burdened in the broken bits and pieces of white supremacist delusion. So, but I also found that I needed ways to, as I'm doing this work, as I'm excavating and unburying my purest human self from under the lies and the cruelty that exist on this land, I would come up with so much rage, and found that it was really dangerous for me to express that rage without having somebody threaten me because they felt scared, or, that, like, expressing anger, which is anger is the emotional expression of injustice. So not being able to express emotionally what that injustice felt like, because for fear that somebody or that you're just going to get shut down, or just any of these things that could happen to you, I started to insert little symbols of outrageous rage expression inside of my work. A lot of works that appeared really innocent. That's that play with polarity. So I'm going to move forward quickly through some of these works and just stop and highlight a few that are also working with that way of unburdening the Black body and giving space to recognize the love and the rage that exists, that polarity that exists, the way that these objects allowed me to express this without, and not to allow the things that I was experiencing and researching to turn my heart into a bitter, corrupted mess, preventing me from loving myself. So more of that, working through power figures, innocence, rage, the blues. Secrets in the work, riddles in the work, historical echoes in the work, an immense amount of love processing through the work. Then coming to a place inside of this particular piece right here, which is in the collection at Crystal Bridges. And this piece where I really started to come to a place as a self-taught artist, of course, doing all this living research, this living schoolwork, right? Outside of any academic institution, but really taking it on. And I started, this is like 10 years ago. I think I really started to think about white supremacy as a public health crisis, and knowing and recognizing that we were going to come crashing into a wall of deep resistance where white supremacy would not want to let go, but that people were going to refuse and begin to refuse with more and more aggression, refuse to be suffocated to death under the knee of anyone. This work is in the collection at Crystal Bridges, like I said. So I'm going to move forward really quickly. I stopped making single discrete artworks. I no longer make just one sculpture that is its own thing. I make entire communities of work. And one of the things that I found was that the people who I talk to my work about in museums would be completely different than the people that I wanted to have conversations with the work about. And so I started to just take my artwork outside and have my friends photograph me on street corners with artwork. I would have, this is my neighbor, Miss Debbie, who passed away shortly after this photograph was taken, braiding my hair on her front porch. And I have a sculpture sitting on a cooler so people can walk by and we can have really wild, interesting conversations right in the hood, because I wanted to be present as an artist in a way that art was present for me. Has been present for me as a force of joy and a force of adventure in really reaching and adventuring and experimenting with freedom. So I'd take the work outside, and I would take the work outside, and then kids started to come around and they would ask me if I would teach them what I was doing. Would I give them a little bit of clay? Could I show them something, show them how to do something? Could they help me make my sculptures? So this is the front porch of one of my houses in Homewood. This is the first house I bought. I bought it for about how much it cost one of my sculptures at that time, which is about $4,000. And I worked on the house myself, and which is why this little girl is painting on a piece of roof slate with some just scrap pieces of wood and whatever leftover scenic paint that my partner at the time had. And the kids would want to make art. And I was like, it makes so much sense to me that the kids would feel what I feel when I'm making art. And this is the very best way, I think, for myself to share love. Because what I found in my studio, when I did not kill myself, instead of killing myself, I let myself do whatever felt right. I actually found love. I found the love of my life. I walked myself into the ecosystem of meaning that was purposed for my humanity when I was born. I found the love of my life, and it saved my life. And it took so much pain up off of my heart. So why wouldn't it transform the lives of the kids around me? So I was like, look, this is going to be the center of my life. I'm going to make art, and I'm going to share what I love. And that means I'll be sharing love. And Bell Hooks told me in All About Love that love always makes more of itself. So just share what you love. And if you see in the picture, there's a Yamaha keyboard. My dad would go to the thrift stores and he would buy the musical instruments, and I bring them out on the porch, and the kids would play musical instruments, and they would make beats, and they would come and bring their friends, and people would drop it in front of my house, and they'd be like, yo, what is this? Do you have a daycare? And I was like, what do I look like having a daycare? I do not have a daycare. They'd be like, who are these kids? And I was like, they're my neighbors. And they're like, you just let them paint here? And I was like, you can't tell kids no when yes is what is in their heart. So we would make art. Kids would come. I got them t-shirts to have, so they didn't get their school clothes ruined. And I remember sitting on the porch one day waiting for the kids to come and waiting for them to get out of school. And there was a shootout as the school buses were letting out, and there were cars shooting at each other, which is so dangerous, right? We know, I shouldn't even have to say that. And I remember having seen so many people killed in the street and so many funerals and so many street corner memorials. And I was like, yo, don't these cats know that we love them? Don't you know that we love you? Don't you know that you don't have to take anybody out? Don't you know that I'll hold you and you can just work through whatever rage you have, that there's enough of us that we would stand around you and we would hold you. You ain't gotta, we love you. Stop shooting each other. And so I pimped this foundation for some grant money by telling them I was going to do an artist residency on my own front porch, because I was really confused about you know, like grants that go to artists. And I was like, wait, I get an idea and I ask this foundation for money and they're going to fund it. I'm gonna be like, well, what if the foundation says no? Does that mean that my idea is invalid? Does that mean that I'm stupid? Does that mean that I'm not a great artist? And I was like, something about this equation of me have an idea, go to foundation, ask for grant money, then they approve and affirm my idea and I make it. Something about that felt tricksy to me. It meant that too much power for my life and my movements would be in the hands of this philanthropic organization. So I was like, I'm not going to ask people for money unless I can ask to be supported for what I am exactly doing right now. I don't want to pimp language to make it seem like I'm doing what the foundation wants me to do. I'm going to say, I want funding to do an artist residency on my own front porch, which is already happening. And I took that grant money and I started to make these signs that say, stop shooting, we love you, because my ridiculous romantic Black self was like, look, if these cats know we love them, they're going to stop shooting each other. And of course, you're hearing that right now. And you're like, okay, Vanessa, maybe it worked sometimes. And for me, that was enough. I was like, if a dude sees this sign, if somebody sees this sign and they stop, you know, hustling guns up to the city park, whatever, and they stop and they say, stop shooting, we love you, and they think about their little sister or their grandmother or their brother, and they go home instead of doing violence, that's fine. I don't care. This is a message that I believe in. And so I started printing the signs, and eventually we, you know, moved off of my front porch because the kids were like, stuff is getting rained on. And we needed more space and I needed to store stuff. So I asked the low income housing agency if we could use this house. And they said, no. They said, you can't use that house. And we eventually were able to use it for, she said, okay, maybe you can use it for 2 months. And she let us use it for 2 years. And I love her for that. The woman who actually runs the low income housing agency in Pittsburgh. And so this is the house. And this image right here is blurred because it's tragic. That's a body in the street outside of the art house in front of a lawn that says, stop shooting, we love you, which is brutal. But it is all the more important that we have spaces right where we are, right down the sidewalk from our own front door, where we can walk into that space and have the opportunity to create, because it is devastating to endure the constant barrage of ugly horror, death, people treating you like you aren't nothing, people treating you like you're only something when they got some grant money to bring you into a place to prove that they are doing their diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff, like just to get out of the trap of not being treated like a whole human being, to have spaces right where you are that are free and open, that you have access to, and that are nimble enough to rise to the occasion of your humanity. So, the art house, death, joy, love, rage, and human wholeness, right? So, working that power figure work. So here you see me as Pieta holding one of my neighbors in my arms. Here you see sculpture as Black Madonna, as Pieta saying the same thing. On this vessel, on this power figure are about 75 hand-blown glass vessels that contain the dreadlocks of my friend who's a Black, gay, male family therapist, who I feel is like such a rare human being, right? And so we blew vessels for each one of his dreadlocks that he cut off. And all these tears are hand-blown glass tears from the Pittsburgh Glass Center, which is an amazing artistic neighbor in Pittsburgh. But doing that work as a citizen artist, really asking the work to go to work. More Black Madonnas. The image that you saw of my mother's quilt at the beginning of the talk, that was a Black Madonna. That's the first Black Madonna that I knew about. My mother made that, but really looking then, remember talking about the narrative, the placement of the Black woman, the Black woman's body in the master American narrative, and thinking about polarity and flipping it from the place of least valuable to the most sacred, the most holy, using the Black Madonna as it would be used in Haitian voodoo. You can apply the Black Madonna to whatever you need her to do, to heal, to protect any specific community of people. More Black Madonnas doing healing, powerful work. This is a Black Madonna on a paper towel from a police police station, and this is a Black Madonna on a piece of toilet paper from the Shady Side Hospital emergency room. So working with that polarity, I mean, the toilet paper, right? And a paper towel, but the most sacred, holy image of the Black Madonna. So playing with that polarity, flipping the script on the master American narrative about the Black woman's body and the Black woman's place. This is one of my neighbors, who I've turned into an image of the Black Madonna in the hidden graffiti field, making her in a place in Pittsburgh that people tell their friends not to go to because it's so dirty and filthy and dangerous and filled with these monstrous, horrible Black people. Oh my God. But here we have the Black Madonna, the most sacred, holy, and powerful image of a Black woman, another friend and neighbor and activist as the Black Madonna. And Black Madonna from turning Serena Williams into the Black Madonna on the cover of Vogue magazine when she was going for the Grand Slam, the greatest of all time. But the comment section in the magazine is saying how ugly she is. But here she is as the holiest and most sacred vision of the Black Madonna, the mother of all creativity, the holder of the power and the prowess of new days, a future maker. And then you have the Black Madonna on a cover on the front page of a newspaper, the Pittsburgh newspaper after the Charleston massacre. So skipping through a whole bunch of images right now, I stopped making, as I told you, I stopped making single discrete sculptures, and I make entire communities of figures right now. This is a body of work called I Come to Do a Violence to a Lie. I have a small studio space, and so oftentimes we photograph my work in the alleyway, which is really wonderful because something like this will happen. The kids just roll up. We have amazing conversations and connections, and they're touched by a sense of possibility that exists not only for me, but for them, just by dint of proximity, by being able to be close to it, by being able to touch it, by being able to be in relationship with the human being who made it, and having direct access to that where no other person has to come and say, oh, little girl, you can do this, you can touch this. Like she can see it for herself, right? And so I love this Thich Nhat Hanh quote that says, it's possible that the next Buddha will not take the form of an individual. The next Buddha may take the form of a community. So I think about that. I think about on Martin Luther King Day, how people held Martin Luther King up as this like singular heroic figure when really he was an entire community of people. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was 5,876,022 human beings. He wasn't just one person. So my sculptures went from being single discrete objects to being entire communities of figures, thinking about communities doing the reckoning work of unhinging the master white supremacist narrative of this land so that we can rise up and inhabit our humanity in the fullness and in the wholeness to which is our birthright, right? It is our birthright to be whole in our humanity, and our humanity has such a spectacular technology embedded within it to elevate us and affirm us in our connections with one another and our connections with the earth. And I'm asking the artwork to do that. So I'm making entire communities of figures. I'm contending with Black death. I'm contending with Black love. I'm contending with Black rage. I am contending with the power of Black folks to actually render a new world for us. Because as far as I'm concerned, when Black women are safe, when Black women are respected, when Black women are building and growing wealth without being shamed, without being undermined, the way the newspapers are trying to do to Stacey Abrams at this time for buying herself $1 million house, where nobody is running that critique on any of the white billionaires. Nobody is telling Elon Musk that he got to stop sending rockets to space because it's gross that he has all that money. When Black women have and are building wealth and are making futures and are running institutions that are loving, whole, caring, and creative for us all, I bet you America won't be America no more, but that will happen. It will come to pass. And so the artwork is simply an ingredient. The artwork is simply an ingredient of the coming to pass, because bet you Black women, Black femmes, Black trans women, Black girls, when we are whole, everyone's whole, right? When we're whole, everyone's whole. Because if we're at the bottom of the list, in the city I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Black women currently have negative in mass broadly, have negative $6 in wealth. White women have 415 times the wealth of Black women. So when Black women are doing well, you know white women are going to be doing well, right? Indigenous women will be doing well. So inside of the work, I'm not just showing sculptures, but we're also activating it. We're asking the power figures to do the powerful work. And this is a work that I have called the Goodbye Song. And we invite community members to come together and do a series of dancing rituals. And inside of the rituals, I don't know if you look in this photograph, you can see that only one person is holding a camera. When we do the ritual, people can't hold cameras unless you're Black, unless you're a BIPOC person, Black, Indigenous, a person of color. Like I don't let the white gaze take recordings of these rituals. So moving forward, this is another ritual called the Blue Walk, the Goodbye Song, that took place in Omaha, Nebraska, around the 100-year memorial for Willie Brown, who was the man that they dragged through the streets and lynched. And I recognize inside of the work that I'm doing, this is not just happening in institutions. It's not just happening in museums and galleries. It's happening in our hearts. It's work that is happening in our souls. It is work that is happening on the land of the earth, because we know that the earth is holding so much trauma. So the work is active inside of every breath and inside of every life that has the opportunity to see the work. So last couple of things we're going to show right now. This is I'm just going to move through this very quickly. So here we are again, we just in the alleyway. We're in the alleyway. This is a 16-foot long boat that I made, and it is a sculptural incarnation of Lutz's Washington Crossing the Delaware, which is often called the most famous painting in America. It was not painted in America. It was not painted by an American. It was not true. It is a complete work of mythical fiction that upholds the master narrative of white supremacy on this land. So of course I'm interested in polarity, right? Because I'm a human, I'm gonna flip it. And I'm not just Black washing the past. I'm not just taking this thing that existed in whiteness and turning it into a Black thing. I am rendering and gathering power under the flag of myth making. Who gets to make myths? Who gets to tell stories? Whose imagination do you live inside of? Do you live inside of the imagination of a 15th century white man who only thought that you were 3/5 of a human being? Sometimes I'm living inside that person's imagination. Bet you I'm not living in forever. The future is bright. So Lutz is Washington Crossing the Delaware. This is called LaQuisha Washington Crosses the Day Aware. There's 13 figures in the boat. The central figure, the Washington figure, is carrying a Black infant. And it all lives in the theater of a city park. It is a real, not real thing. It is the theater of relief. It is the theater of a potential monument in a maybe city park one day, the central monuments being focused on the bodies of Black and brown people being led by a water river carrying Black figure, that is the figure of a Black girl leading that monument into the future. So this is called Miracles and Glory Abound. The acronym is MAGA, because I got tired of hearing MAGA, but I also really am always thinking about that polarity. I'm always gonna flip the script. I'm always gonna move with the hip hop capacity to remix the story, to give us a new beat, to dance out our freedom to. So inside of Lutz's Washington Crossing the Delaware, becoming LaQuisha Washington Crosses the Day Aware in this institution, I created the entire city park. I created the people who are looking at the figure, looking at the monument. And these are explosive Black bodies. They have crystals coming out of their faces. They have white legs kicking out of their imagination. They have bird cages for heads. I created a series of trees that are not real trees, but they are the metaphorical trees of transformation. They are trees of love and trees of hope and trees of rage. And the installation has a soundtrack that runs in it, and it has all of this video projection that shows a wild new world. So moving forward, lastly, to just some images of, images of the work in my neighborhood. I shoot a series of photographs called The Blacks. I go on social media and I look to see which one of my friends is feeling despair, which happens all the time. Just Black people who are exhausted, just tired of watching Black people die, tired of having to turn the radio off so they can't hear what's happening in the Derek Chauvin trial, tired of having to get up and go to work when they're grieving, and no one understands what that is like. So I would look on social media, I'd be like, okay, Julia seems really depressed. And I would reach out to her and I would say, hey, do you want to come to the house? We'd take some photographs. And really what would happen is it would be the opportunity for me to love my friends and to love my neighbors intimately and creatively and give them images of themselves as they imagine themselves. Because I would ask people, how do you want to feel in these photographs? And they would say, I want to feel like a riot. I want to feel like I'm beautiful. The little boy in the photograph that you're currently looking at, he said, I was taking the pictures and he drove by and he stopped that little scary motorcycle dirt bike right in the alleyway. And he asked his friend that he was with, he said, is there a person in the alleyway? And the guy was like, yeah, there's a girl standing there. And the kid really looked flummoxed. And he looked at Julia and he looked back to his friend and he goes, oh, I thought I saw an angel. That's what he said when he saw Julia. And so I said, nope, that's not an angel. That's Julia. Why don't you get in the picture? And he took this picture, but the look on his face that looked like look at his face. He looks like he really kind of can't believe it's happening. It was a really powerful moment for me. I'll never forget it. This is my friend Ramona expressing that despair on Facebook about after, her daughter had been killed. And so we got together and spent a whole day together walking through the neighborhood, her looking beautiful and glorious in clothes that I made for her, doing her hair and her makeup, and just being in connection, in love, and in creativity together. This is one of my assistants, Ada, and going through the neighborhood, this is what happens. You walking through the neighborhood with some beautiful photographs and kids just start following you. They want to know what's happening. They want to know if they can partake in it. And we have this house, which is the art house, as a hub. It is a place of love and soul. The open door of the art house means whenever the door is open, anybody can come in. I'm not going to wand you down. Nobody's going to ask you if you have a weapon, because people come in the art house and they're just struck by how beautiful it is to see the ceiling, the walls, everything covered with art, and to be offered the opportunity to say, sir, do you want to make something? And people are flummoxed. They're like, do I have to pay? How much is it? Like, is it really okay for me to sit in here and paint? People don't let grown men make art anymore. And I'm like, yo, those are lies. This space is your space. You want to paint some lions? Sit down and paint some lions. The mosaic on the front of the art house is most beautiful to me because everybody worked on it. People would wait for the bus and they would just do a little bit at a time. The art house is a living place, which means we are not serving any branding except love. Love is the brand. And trust and believe, this is not romantic. Love being the brand doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that stuff comes fast. It doesn't mean that it's always wonderful or that it always feels good. But what it means is that we are in an effort of soul. We are in a loving, creative effort of soul in our lives, holding our lives as wholeness. So this image is of like 100 and something people in a hug after the Pulse nightclub massacre, when the churches were acting like they didn't want to let gay people come in to mourn because they were gay. And so I was like, yo, we'll light lanterns at the art house. This is the bus that you take to get here. I was actually floored by how many people came. I just one time came out of the house and people were just streaming up the street. And I was like, wow, I hope the police don't come and tell us we can't do it. So, this is my studio. These are the last images. This is my studio. This is my most recent work. This is in progress, the work being in progress at the Frick Art Museum. This artwork is inspired by my grandmother's living room. This is my grandmother's living room. My grandmother migrated to Milwaukee from Louisiana. She was the daughter of a sharecropper, the granddaughter of formerly enslaved people. And I love how my grandmother appoints all these objects in her living room to make the space special, to make it holy, to make it elegant, to make it sacred, to make it feel the way her heart wants to feel when she looks at it. And I respect this as a work of art. I respect it as an altar to the house of one's soul. I respect it as a way that my grandmother is enacting her own creativity on her own time in her own space. This is my grandmother in her own space with her own pink little flippers on. And the artwork that I'm about to show you is also inspired by this street corner memorial in my neighborhood in an alleyway called Formosa Way. So the work that I'm thinking about right now is about grief and about light and about how transformative grief is. I'm thinking about how Rumi said the wound is how the light gets in, right? And so for as many wounds as we have so much light coming in, y'all. For as much grief and as much sorrow and as much power and love and creativity we have, there's so much light coming into us, and we can move that light out through us with deep intention through the technology of our own humanity. Eye contact is a human technology. Hand holding is a human technology. Being and working through conflict without accumulating death, human technology. So this is what the work looks like now. And you can see from the inspiration, my grandmother's living room and the street corner memorial. This exists in the soundtrack of an opera called Unburied, Unmourned, Unmarked, Requiem for Rice composed by, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name right now. But you can see it at the Frick Pittsburgh, and check out the Frick Pittsburgh on Instagram, and you can see some of the work. And I'm thinking about polarity. So I think about what happened to so many Black bodies in the United States as their contemporary lynchings. To have somebody sit on your neck, from somebody who works for something, who is supposed to be in service of justice, sit on your neck for 10 minutes. That's a kind of lynching. It's public. It's visual terror. It's horror. It's a brutality. And I'm thinking now, what's the opposite of a lynching? How beautiful and abundant is a world that holds Black bodies in a space where they could never, ever be lynched. So I'm thinking also about social healing. Where can we heal together? What social spaces do we trust? Are there any spaces we trust? Can museums be those spaces? And the last thing I'm gonna show you is these t-shirts that I started making last week. I'm doing a series of 100 t-shirts about every day, painting t-shirts to get some of the catastrophe or the trauma out of my body so that I can even function, to go to my studio so that I can function, to love myself and see myself, so that I can function, to love my animals, to love, not talking about them possessively, but to love the animals that I live with, and to love other human beings, and to be, so each t-shirt is a reckoning work. Each t-shirt is a power figure in and of itself, thinking about adorning your body with a protection and a message. Hi, friend. This is a power figure to protect your holy body from the police. This will keep you safe. So the object is the t-shirt. The object is the power figure. The object is the armor. The object is also in recognition of the fact that this body is also not safe, right? The polarity, the thing itself. So these were some of the most recent t-shirts that I made. And I know that it's 7 o'clock right now. I just want to take the time to say thank you to everybody who made this talk possible. And it takes a lot of emails to make things happen. So to anybody who sent an email or answered an email, and much love to Chris Nuzzi from Pavel Zubik Fine Art in New York, who takes care of and handles so many of the details to get me, to bring me present in these spaces. So we're gonna take some questions and answers. I'm gonna look really quick at the chat, and then Lourdes is on for me to answer.
Yes, so if you guys have any questions, Vanessa, thank you so much. I'm gonna be honest, my emotions are up and down as you were talking, and how can I say it without swearing? Thank you for how I feel like a sucker punch for my ignorance. When I saw your artwork in the beginning, it's visually amazing, but thank you for making my ignorance aware of your artwork. And if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and put them down on the chat. And I know that we're also looking for anybody in the Facebook, if anybody has any questions. We have something from Kristen Weeks who says, I just want to say thank you, Vanessa, for your vulnerability, incredible humanness, and courage to authentically be yourself.
Thank you.
We have from John, he says, hey, Vanessa, just wanted to say, as a Pittsburgh local, how wonderful I think it is you have created a space like Art House, something that unlike a museum is open and free to anyone to be an artist or an audience. I'm wondering if you have any insights on what it takes to set up space like that. It is as simple as doing it, or do you need a lot of funding, backing, etc.?
I bought the houses for the art house outright. I paid cash for them. I bought them. I did a GoFundMe to help me renovate them. And it raised, I don't know, a third of what I sought to raise for it. And then I got a gift to help me complete working on the houses. I think what's really important is to not wait. I think that you can build more than one thing at a time. So if what is important to you is to share what you love, if it's important to you to be in connection creatively with your neighbors and your friends, then do that with what you have right where you are. And follow the energy of rightness and the energy of yes that comes when you do that. So I don't think that you necessarily have to have a ton of funding. I think that sometimes you got to be where you are and really build the shape of what could come with the energies that are fueling you from doing that thing, the thing itself, right where you are. And I know that, somebody else could answer this question by saying, yeah, go to this foundation and ask for $500,000 and move this way. I move the way that I move, and I can talk about that expertly, and I can't talk about anything else expertly. I always think people should try and see what it feels like to intentionally make a space to share what they love once a month. So if you love making biscuits or peach cobbler, or you love reading Rumi poems, what would happen if once a month for an hour, you just put on social media, I'm going to read from the illuminated Rumi on my front porch. If anybody wants to come, bring a pull-up chair and listen to me and have a conversation about it, you can do that. But what starts to happen when you move intentionally to share what you love? Love always makes more of itself, and it will do that in ways that you cannot necessarily manipulate or engineer. So there are many routes of adventure forward into making spaces for people to be whole and in connection with each other.
We have another question from Danielle. She says, as a white woman, I feel guilt and inferiority and many emotions that I am struggling to convey. I don't feel worthy of you, your time, your brilliance, your capacity for love. but I also feel connected in
Wait, stop. Go back into that. That whole thing again.
As a white woman, I feel guilt, inferiority, and many emotions that I am struggling to convey. I don't feel worthy of you, your time, your brilliance, your capacity for love, but I also feel connected in your humanity and inspired by your braveness. How do you quiet your inner voices of guilt and shame and inferiority, etc., etc.? Be brave and make difference. How do you share?
I choose. I choose to love myself. I choose to speak kindly to myself. I choose to be gentle to myself. I mean, it's really easy in this world to loathe yourself. It's easy to loathe yourself to death in the world that we live in. There's a lot of fuel for that. I choose not to do that, and I choose not to do that. Mind you, I tried to do that. I tried to walk off a cliff, and I gave myself an experiment. Perhaps you need to give yourself an experiment to see what would happen if all of this weekend, every time you have a thought of guilt and every time you have a thought of self-hate or self-loathing or being unworthy, tell yourself that you're a whole human being and that you are going to treat yourself gently and kiss yourself as tenderly as you would kiss anybody who expressed deep pain to you. And what if you actively do that to yourself? Just see what it's like. Give yourself an experiment, a one-to-one experiment for every thought of guilt, self-punishment, derision of self, and shame that comes, that you meet that one-to-one or one-to-two. For every thought, you meet it with another thought and an action of self-love, even if that action is caressing your own cheek. But I believe that within the power and the capacity of our humanity, we have deep medicine for our own selves.
Thank you. Okay, we also have John would like to thank you for your answer, for your wisdom. Do we have any other?
Thank you for your questions, and thank you for everybody who's, you know, even just stepping up to talk. I appreciate being in connection with you.
Yes, I wanted to add that we do have somebody, Vanessa, who would love to say something. So I'm gonna let Kristen speak now too.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm super technologically illiterate. I mean, I just want to say thank you, Vanessa, again. And I know I already stated that, but there is something so deep in your soul that when I remember when I found you, I was just like, who is she? She's like my spirit animal. Like literally, that's how it felt. Like the work that you were doing is just so profound. And as someone who recognizes that our creative selves is where the healing is, I think that you are such like an undoubtedly just such an amazing asset to humanity, and not just your community. And what a lucky community truly to have you, but also for all of humanity. I know I feel more inspired today after listening to you and really just understanding and feeling that connection and understanding like, hey, like, yeah, there's other people that know that love is the change. Love is the action that needs to happen. And I am so thankful for you. I truly am. So thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing yourself with us, but also with everybody that can reach you. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to let me hear your voice, to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. We have a question by an anonymous attendee, and it says, with the amount of awareness and vulnerability you have not only of self, but also of humanity? How do you get to do that, to that point?
I think that I am as you are. And I decided that it was really important to me to trust my heart. And sometimes that's really messy, but that's the way that I want to live. So instead of killing myself, I decided that I wanted to live very specific ways. And one of them was in ways that are centered in the heart, and in ways that are where I can be vulnerable and courageous. And I also give myself a lot of grace and gentleness, because I don't always like to be around a lot of people, and I have to give myself permission for that to be okay. But what you should also know is that human beings are powerful. As a human being with a heart, your heart is a precious and mighty vehicle that has unfortunately been riddled and undermined and convinced against you. Like, we're convinced against our own hearts a lot of times. There's a lot of information and movement of things and stuff around the world that we live in, and the heart can be submerged inside of all of that. But one of the clearest thoughts that I have had, one of the singular clearest thoughts, feelings, knowings that have emerged through my body in connection with all that is and has ever been and as ever will be, that clearest thought was that it is through the power of our hearts that we will be whole, and that we will make a space where we can all live and rise and thrive and love and be messy and courageous and human. It's actually not gonna come through any governmental policy. It will have to be a revolution, a radical revolution of rising hearts. So that rang to me loud and clear, like a slap to the cat's walking on my keyboard, like a slap right to the center of my chest. And so every day I excavate the lies, I excavate old self-hate, I excavate relationships that don't serve me or that make me sad a lot. I don't serve those things in my life. I excavate the lies and out of myself, and it's very difficult and painful and lonely sometimes, but it helps me to have a clearer access to my heart. But I am nothing that you are not.
I have my hand raised, but I also want others to ask questions before I even share my feelings. So if anyone wants to ask before I share, or can I just go and share? I'm gonna share. So Vanessa, I really appreciate your transparency and your awareness. Watching your presentation, it really encouraged me to slow down and be present and to just listen. But I was also so excited at the same time because I feel like you were speaking obviously to not everybody else, but you were speaking to my soul. And I almost want to come to tears because as you were talking, I literally was just thinking about the fact that you are not afraid to feel. And I think oftentimes a lot of us are afraid to feel, whether that be, and especially anger and rage and pain. And the fact that you were okay with saying, no, I felt these things and I'm going to take that and put it into my work is super powerful. And it really encouraged me, you know, and made me think to not be afraid to feel at all. And I don't know how anybody else feels in this conversation out on Facebook or whatnot, but it's the first step is to start feeling, you know, to not be afraid of those emotions that come with, you know, all the stuff that's going on. And I just, it was a statement more so like, I'm grateful for this and I'm grateful for you. I know it's just a presentation, but I really truly feel like it was healing for me. This whole presentation was healing and almost wants to bring me to tears because I'm a crier. Y'all, I think a couple people in here know that I'm a crier, but I really truly thank you for your work. I thank you for your passion. I thank you for being present and for being aware and for really just like taking us on a journey. And I'm grateful for that, truly. So I just really had to share that with you. Because I had been following you on Instagram a little bit, but I'm like, it's nothing compared to you sitting here and speaking with you. And so I appreciate you really deeply.
I appreciate you also. Thank you so much for recognizing my soul and for allowing yourself to be in that current of soul. That's to me, that is like a great truth of being human, is that we can connect in ways that are invisible and so substantial. So you affirm for me what I know to be true in my soul about love and about power and about what can happen that you could never prescribe by living through these places of heart and love and soul. Like I could never have imagined you'd have said that at the end of this, at the time that we've had together. That is deeply affirmative to me. And I trust your soul. And I trust that your soul will always open you up and always give you pause to listen deeply to that which is nourishing, to the river that runs within you, that connects you to all of your people. We know that, you know, through quantum physics, that all points in time are connected. So that exists within you. And I know that it does. And you are so deeply loved. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sis.
All right. Does anybody have any other questions? All right. I don't see any other questions. Vanessa, again, I would like to thank you for being a presenter for Erie Arts and Culture. I'm going to read. So I would like to also let you know that you have opened up my eyes to a deeper self of myself that I wasn't aware. I think I speak for, you know, everybody. You have let us be all ourselves, and I appreciate you as an artist and also for what you're doing with our youth. I'm gonna wrap it up. Vanessa, would you have any other words?
Only that whatever energy that you have or you feel right now, as you leave the call and leave these images, please celebrate that feeling inside of yourself and root it. hold on to it and root it to the passion and to the purpose and to the drive that you already have, and ask it to reveal more of you and more of that feeling, whatever that feeling is for you, to reveal more of that to you in your life, because all of these moments, everything that has been shared is so much more than just a sharing on a Thursday night talk on Zoom, if you really allow it to be that. So I am grateful for the place of willingness and allowance in your hearts and in your minds, and grateful for who you all are as human beings, and for the work of wholeness that you are doing through your breath and in your relationships and in whatever jobs you click in and click out of, and whatever relationships that you have. I am grateful for the love that you are and the love that supports you and carries you all. And I hope that you all move forward with safety, and that you have sweet dreams, and that you have a beautiful day tomorrow and a wonder-filled weekend.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Make sure to visit Erie Arts and Culture website for the remaining Arts and Agency Week. Thank you all.